Let's come back from the break, please. We have reached the 5 p.m. public comment session on day 5 of the hearing on EIB 21-27. This is a rulemaking petition on ozone precursors. Public comment is given under oath, is given by audio rather than video, and is limited to 5 minutes. I have the following public commenters I'll call on now. In the event you've joined us and are on the platform seeking to make public comment and I do not read your name, please reach out through the chat. Senator Steinborn, David Boquin, Ellyn Dewicki, Tara Lujan, and David Shoop. And let me apologize in advance if I have mispronounced your name. Let's see. David, is this you, Senator Steinborn? Can you hear me? I've unmuted you. Okay. Let's see if I can find Senator Steinborn somewhere else in the list. It unfortunately alphabetizes folks by their first name. Okay, let me go to David Boquin. Mr. Boquin, I'm unmuting you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Madam Officer.
Thank you. If you would please spell your name.
My first name is David, D-A-V-I-D. My last name is spelled Boquin, B-O-U-Q-U-I-N.
Thank you. And if you would raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes, I do. I affirm to tell the truth.
Thank you. I'm going to start your 5 minutes now.
Okay, thank you. My name is David Boco and I live in the Albuquerque North Valley. My professional position is I'm a risk analyst for Los Alamos National Laboratory. The reason I'm calling today is because I'm very concerned about the health effects and the pollution effects of oil and gas on what I've read is approximately 130,000 New Mexicans that live within a half a mile of oil and gas development. And so, as I'm going to say, the 3 points that I'm sure has been brought up before, I haven't been able to listen to much of the hearing because I've been working at Lanel, but the 3 points, and then I'm going to just say something about the process. The 3 points are I would want the oil and gas people to have frequent inspections and to strengthen as much as possible those inspections of the wells and the leaks. The second part is a completion of oil and gas control pollution during completion of the well. So we want the operators to control the pollution to the completion of an oil and gas well. And the third point would be a pneumatic controllers. We want to make sure we have strong requirements on those pneumatic controllers. As you know, they are a very large, I've heard they're the second largest source of oil and gas methane emissions. And methane emissions is a much stronger carbon reducing emission than other carbon dioxide sources. Let me say something about being as a risk analyst for the lab. I'm a risk analyst on literally hundreds of millions of dollars of projects. What we do is we assess and we work with project managers and functional managers to assess the risks of all kinds of nuclear infrastructure. I work in major equipment and other things. and we monitor it and we come up with mitigation actions. I believe the oil and gas producers have the resource to monitor leaking and emissions that exceed the thresholds that are being proposed here. They can do this monthly if they choose to do this, and they should choose to do this. They have the resources and the ability to do that. If they they monitor the times they go above the thresholds, they should be doing that frequently, monthly. They should be doing carrying out mitigation actions all the time, and they should be working on inspections to collect the data all the time to be able to to ensure they're in compliance. If they go out of compliance, they should be able to fix it fairly quickly because they should know their technology. So I believe they have the ability to do that. Let's be real. I use oil and gas in my car. I drive a Prius. I use natural gas in my home. I'm going to work towards more electrification from renewables, but I do use oil and gas. So I'm not asking them to stop doing that. I'm asking them to, oil and gas producers, to spend a strong effort to inspect, monitor, and mitigate when they do go out of compliance. Every project has risk, everybody violates the risk, and everybody should be able to have a plan and mitigation action to fix those risks in a quickly and timely manner. And so I want to strengthen, make sure the rules are strengthened for inspections, completion of oil and gas wells, and the mnemonic controllers that release methane. That's basically my testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boquin. I'm going to unmute someone named David again. Hello? Can
It's
you hear me?
David Shoop.
Oh, David Shoop. I'm sorry, Mr. Shoop, I'm going to take you in just a little bit.
Okay.
And call in user 14. Call in user 14, would you identify yourself? No. Okay. So let me move on then to, excuse me, Ellyn Duwicki. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, and I can hear you. If you would please spell your name.
First name is Ellyn, E-L-L-E-N. Last name Duwicki, D-U-E-W-E-K-E.
Thank you very much. If you would raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'm going to start your 5 minutes now.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Environmental Improvement Board for giving us this opportunity to speak and for listening to our concerns. And I understand that the oil and gas industry may consider this proposal to be overregulation. They feel the increased operating expenses will be excessive and will unfairly reduce their bottom line. But they have an obligation to reduce their pollutants where they can. The cost to not destroy the environment and local community health is just a necessary business expense that they must bear. And I don't understand why there should be a small business exemption. This is a heavily regulated industry by necessity. You don't get to pollute the environment just because it creates a financial hardship for you. Large companies are, of course, larger polluters, and so, of course, their cost to comply is higher too. But addressing pollution is costing all of us financially and in our way of life. Children and families have to bear the cost of lost days at school or at work because of respiratory illness. The cost of industrial irresponsibility is being put on them. And individuals are required to bear the financial burden as well of reducing pollution. As a resident of Bernalillo County, the law requires me to have my car's emissions tested every 2 years. I must bear the expense of the test, and if my vehicle is found to be polluting, I must either pay for the repairs to bring it into compliance or stop driving it. I don't have the right to say, well, I know I'm polluting the air and adding to the global climate crisis, but I'm afraid I just can't afford not to. No, if I couldn't afford it, I would just have to find another way to get to work. That's my responsibility. We all have to do our part because we have no right to add to the climate crisis and damage local air quality. I was kind of thinking of it like the doctor's Hippocratic oath, first do no harm, but in reality, we're all doing harm. It's just a matter of reducing the amount of harm as much as possible. And the oil and gas industry is causing a lot of harm. It's not because they're monsters. They're supplying a demand that you and I are demanding every day. And the state is benefiting from this industry through tax revenues and job creation. So if we're resigned to allowing this polluting industry to exist, shouldn't we at least do whatever we can to mitigate the harm? And I would think the industry would want to do what they can to reduce harmful emissions. If not for altruistic, then for political reasons. This is the oil and gas industry's opportunity to do the right thing and improve their image in the community at the same time. Yes, the trillions of dollars of profits they make off extracting from our public lands may be slightly reduced, but in the end, they will be improving our world and with it, their own and their children's futures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dewicki. I have found Senator Steinborn. Senator Steinborn, I'm unmuting you. Can you hear me?
I sure can. And I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh no, you're very, very soft.
Yes, I'll do my best.
All right. If you would please spell your last name.
Sure. Steinborn, Steinborn.
All right. And if you would raise your right hand, do you?
I have video. It's not on the screen. I don't know why, but
No, sir. No, sir. Public comment is taken through audio and not video as
okay.
a security measure
Very good.
during this hearing with 100 to 165 participants every
I
day.
got you. I got you. My right hand is raised.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And you're going to have to really project.
Speak up.
Thank you.
Okay, I will be brief. Thank you very much, members of the EIB, for taking this comment and even considering these rules. Simply put, people cannot be sacrificial lambs for the sake of making money. And when we consider the health impacts of oil and gas operations, we have the highest obligation as public servants, as you are, as I am, to protect public health, to protect air, to protect water. And so, simply put, we have an obligation to follow best practices, to put in the best standards available to science and available technologically. And so I want to compliment the governor, Secretary Kenny, those that have worked very hard to promulgate some very strong rules. However, there are some ways that you have in your jurisdiction to make them even stronger. And I will just reiterate, I'm sure what others have said, which are that number one, we have to consider those that are living amongst the industry and protect their public health. And so the only way we can do that is to require frequent inspections and find and fix leaks. Number two, we have to ensure strong requirements for operators to control pollution, as well as any operations to develop or redevelop existing wells. And finally, I understand that the pneumatic controllers contribute a lot of the pollution that occurs, and that we should require companies to inspect pneumatics for leaks and accelerate the timeline to retrofit equipment with zero bleed or zero emission pneumatic controllers. And so, committee, I just urge you to adopt the strongest possible rules. We are without a doubt, as we know, one of the leaders in the country on production. I think regardless of how strong your rules are not going to affect that level of production. We just affect how much we protect people's health. So I hope that we become a leader in this space, and I urge you to put people first. And I thank you very much for your time today, and encourage you to adopt the strongest rules possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Steinborn. We will turn now to Representative Tara Lujan. I have unmuted you, Representative. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming through nice and loud. If you would please spell your name.
Yes, L-U-J. My full name is Tara, T as in Tom, A-R-A. Last name Lujan, L-U-J-A-N.
Thank you very much. If you would raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, and I want to thank the board for convening and having these meetings and public comment. Thank you also to our governor and to Secretary Kenny and his staff and all those who have worked on these proposals and the rule proposals. It's taken a lot of time and work. We know that they are understaffed, and we are working to help with that issue. We're, as Senator just said, we're leading regulations in the United States, and that's something we should be proud of. However, even though we're off to a good start, I'd like to advocate that these rules be strengthened to protect communities and those living close to the industries where these developments are. We know that 130,000 New Mexicans live next to these industrial developments, and 22,000 are Native Americans living in San Juan County. So we also know that Colorado has already implemented similar rules that are in line with stronger inspections and stronger rules regulating around these communities that live within close proximity to the industry. I would ask that we look at those rules and see how we can implement similar rules into what we are doing right now. We owe this to our state, and as a state representative, just as the senator have said, we have the highest obligation to protect all those who live in our state, and we also have the highest obligation to protect our land, air, and water quality. And the net effect of these proposals that we have in front of us can be strengthened, and I hope that we do move towards that. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but let me just get my I had to stop because I'm traveling, Madam Chair. Let's see. So the list of things that we are working towards is to protect those living closest to development or require more frequent inspections to find and fix those leaks. We know that these technologies already exist and some industry is already using them. We'd like you to work to ensure strong requirements for operations to control pollution during the completion of an oil or gas well as when they redevelop an existing well. And third, I ask and support to strengthen requirements to cut pollution from pneumatic controllers that are used in oil and gas production. These devices are the second largest source of oil and gas methane emissions in New Mexico. An MED would ask to require companies to inspect these pneumatics for leaks and accelerate the timeline to retrofit equipment with zero bleed or zero emission pneumatic controllers. And like I said, some of those in industry are already using technology to do some of this work. And we know that this is a strong industry, and it is in the Permian Basin here in New Mexico and Texas that is the world leader in oil production. And in New Mexico, we are going to be at 1 million barrels of oil production a day, if not already. And so I feel like the industry, and we know that the industry can afford to take these measures. And we're just asking that the support is put into place. Thank you to the board. Thank you to all the members and all those who participate today. And it was, I was listening to Mr. Nichols' portion during your meeting today, and I want to say and thank him for all the leading views that he has moved forward and support those as well. Thank you to the board again, and that is all I have to say right now. Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much, Representative Lujan. Let me go back to Mr. Shoop. Mr. Shoop, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Madam Chair.
Oh, and I can hear you. If you would please spell your name.
It's David, D-A-V-I-D, last name Shoop, S-H-O-U-P.
Thank you. And if you raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'm going to start your 5 minutes now.
Okay. My name is David Shoop. I'm a local business owner in southeast New Mexico. I'm also presently the president of the Carlsbad Municipal School Board. I'm testifying today in favor of stronger ozone and methane regulation in New Mexico. I think you heard earlier today from Eddy County Commissioner Ernie Carlson, who I've partnered in business with for the past 25 years. He's a lifelong friend and mentor of mine. I'm third generation. We've been here for 63 years. I'm the CEO of one of New Mexico's largest heavy highway construction firms. We have aggregate and asphalt and ready-mix locations throughout southeastern New Mexico. And I employ over 400 people in Eddy, Lee, and Chavez County. As a leader and a business owner here, I must be an advocate for my employees, family, and friends. To be completely honest, I was not a strong supporter of increased regulations at all, which you could probably imagine, until 2019 when my wife was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. It was definitely a life-changing moment for me and my family. Caused me to learn more about the environmental factors that affect our health and well-being as residents in southeastern New Mexico. And what I found is I live in a pretty dangerous area with the industry that's present there. And I think it's way past time that we adjust some of the regulations on oil and gas production so that we can realistically reduce the harmful emissions that put people and our environment at risk there. I've testified many times, in line with the WIP site. I think it was brought up here today, the waste isolation pilot plants between Carlsbad and Hobbs. And it was always in support of that repository. And it was because of the regulatory oversight and monitoring that I was comfortable doing that. And I have a friend that works there now that, his job is to go check air monitors and wildlife and waterways and those kind of things. And I just question as to why we don't do that in relation to oil and gas. My understanding, we don't even have air monitors in the middle of the oil area to check for VOCs and methane that are emitted during production. And a lot of these well sites, as you're well aware, are less than a mile from schools and homes. They're in those areas, and we need to get serious about that. Many leaders and friends of mine have not quite realized economic health isn't the only form of health that we should be prioritizing in our community. As a business owner and a member of the school board, I understand the budgetary issues. I realize oil and gas industry contributes a lot of money to our state, to our community, to our schools. But there must be a balance between revenue and the health impacts to our frontline communities. That is why I support stronger regulations. Again, thank you for your time tonight and good luck.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shoop. The last person I'm looking for this session is Rhonda, friend of Sister Brown. I'm unmuting caller 14. Who is this, please? Okay, I'm going to unmute caller 15. Who is caller 15, please?
This is Rhonda Newby Torres.
Terrific. I found you. If you would please spell your name.
My name is Rhonda, R-H-O-N-D-A. Last name is Newby, N-E-W-B-Y Torres, T-O-R-R-E-S.
Thank you. If you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
All right. I'm going to start your 5 minutes. I have a request, though. We're making a transcript, and you're a little soft. So if you can project more, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the Environmental Improvement Board for hearing us today about the new smog or the ozone precursor rules. I want to talk today about how methane pollution affects me personally. I'm from Carlsbad, New Mexico, and I have watched as the gas tanker next to my parents' house exploded in the middle of the night and caused a neighborhood emergency evacuation. I have watched as temporary man camps have taken over residential areas and contributed to unsafe conditions in my hometown. I've watched as the oil and gas industry has devastated my hometown, making a few individuals financially rich, but leaving the community in shambles. And I've watched my childhood friends die one by one working in the oil and gas industry. Many of them died mysteriously, in quotes, from gas leaks at work sites. And I've watched my parents, my aunts and my uncles, and my cousins experience, quote, mysterious illnesses and health issues that can't be diagnosed. Methane pollution also affects me spiritually. As a Christian leader, I uphold the great commandment to love God and love thy neighbor. The methane pollution and the oil and gas industry related is an affront to this commandment. I can no longer sit by and watch my neighbors be neglected, abused, and killed by this industry and by methane pollution. In addition, methane pollution contributes to the climate change and the abuse of our global neighbors. As a faith leader, I strongly support more frequent inspections, stronger requirements to control pollution, stronger requirements to cut pollution and methane pollution. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. We have reached the end of the public comment requested this evening. So we'll return to the technical case. Can we get Mr. Nichols back on screen? Thank you very much, Mr. Nichols. I believe when we broke, we had finished the party questioning of you on your testimony, and I was about to turn to the board for their questions. If you are on the platform as an attendee and would have a question of Mr. Nichols, please reach out through the chat. So, Madam Chair, do you have questions of Mr. Nichols?
Thank you so much, Madam Hearing Officer. I think I got my signal back here. Good afternoon, Mr. Nichols, and thank you so much for your testimony and also through the cross-examination questions. I just had a few follow-up questions. I know you had mentioned the concern about the reporting requirements as a necessity in terms of improvements to the rules and regulations. And I know we had also, with some of the other parties, talked about timeframes or timelines of phasing in those requirements. And I just had just kind of an overall question. Would having the, yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure. Would having reporting and monitoring requirements included in the proposed rule, would you support having those in if longer timeframes were included in order for companies to get up to speed in reporting and monitoring as kind of like an offset or balance of the proposed rules?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Madam Chair, and good evening. I might have crossed the threshold from afternoon to evening by now, but thank you so much for that question and your time today. I'll be totally honest. I mean, we would want better regs yesterday, and we would want the most expeditious time frame for compliance and meeting record keeping and reporting requirements. But if this board believes that it may be reasonable to adopt some kind of a phase-in of reporting requirements, I think the end goal is ensuring that we achieve some degree of transparency with the public. And if the board decides that's a reasonable approach, we wouldn't oppose that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Nichols. I apologize. I'm again still having bandwidth issues. Had to turn off my video. But I do have a couple more questions, and thank you for that answer. Earlier in our hearings, a couple of days ago, I know Ms. Hollenberg stated in her testimony that information and data is needed to help NMED regulate. I think I'm paraphrasing, that's not verbatim, but something to that effect. And given that, do you think that the proposed language would help NMED have access to accurate data on facilities as the most recent set of proposed language here in September?
You mean the department's proposed language?
Yeah, the department's proposed language, I think of September 16th.
As I've seen their latest version of the proposed rules, there would still be no reporting requirements specific to implementation of these rules. They would continue to receive excess emission reports, which Ms. Hollenberg flagged in her testimony and in her written presentation. And again, part of what we're suggesting is that a reporting requirement specific to these rules be crafted and implemented to ensure that where there may be issues of deviation from work practices or more qualitative standards, that those instances be reported. Our concern is the excess emission reporting requirements are very specific to quantitative emission rates or limits, and that the more qualitative standards, such as reduced wellhead pressure, wouldn't necessarily count as an excess emission, but yet are core to achieving compliance with these regulations and meeting the goal of keeping ozone precursors in check. So I do feel that the proposal before you now still does not address our core concern, and would urge the board to consider making an improvement to that end.
And on your most recent language, I'm just looking at timing, logistical timing. So your most recent proposal on the language, that was submitted prior to the September 16th revision, is that correct?
Yes, it was submitted as an exhibit to our notice of intent to present technical testimony and as an exhibit to my written testimony. And it was also laid out in my written testimony.
Yes, okay, thank you for that, Mr. Nichols. So since you've reviewed the September 16th, and you may have answered this prior, since the most recent September 16th version, do you have any further recommendations or change or modifications to your recommendations on language?
Well, what we've suggested is modifying proposed 20.2.50.112 paragraph D to expound on the reporting requirements that are included already. And the reporting requirements, let me reframe that. It's reporting requirements conceptually, but the reporting, as we've heard throughout this hearing, operators will report only if requested by the department. And what we have proposed is language that would require certain instances and certain monitoring event reports to be submitted to the department where they reflect deviations from the proposed regulations. And so not reporting of everything and all the vast information that operators are going to maintain, and simply focus on ensuring that this is a matter of practice, that instances of deviations are reported and not necessarily just in response to environment department requests.
Okay. I think that's all I have for right now, Mr. Nichols, and I appreciate your responses. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vice Chair Trujillo Davis, do you have questions of Mr. Nichols?
I do not have any at this time. Thank you, Mr. Nichols, for your time today.
Member Cates?
No questions. Thank you for the thorough testimony today, and thanks.
Thank you.
Member Bitzer?
I have no questions, Madam Hearing Officer. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if Member Duvall is back from his class or not. No. Member Garcia?
I think I'll wait for the department response to Mr. Nichols. So I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
All right. And Member Honker?
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. I don't have any questions.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Nichols, is there any redirect?
No, thank you. No further redirect. Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Nichols, and thank you very much, Mr. Nichols.
Thank you.
Do I understand we'll be returning to the department now?
This is Ana Gutierrez with Hogan Levels. I believe we were slated to go next, but I will happily cede our time back to the hearing process, and Kinder Morgan will not be presenting testimony on this issue.
All right. I might be reading the spreadsheet wrong, but thank you very much, Ms. Gutierrez. Ms. Katz?
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. I think we are now to the last part of this, unless anybody wants to jump in. Okay. The department calls Elizabeth Bisbee-Keene and Michael Baka for rebuttal.
Okay, I see Ms. Keene. Let me see if I need to add Mr. Baka. Oh, there he is. All right, and screen sharing, Ms. Keene?
No screen sharing for either on this.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Keene, I'm going to start with you here. Going back to some of the testimony from some of the industry parties, so now I'm going to take you back to the date and timestamp requirements in connection with the compliance data report. Would the department agree to an extension of the time frame to implement the date timestamp GPS requirements as suggested by NMOGA and IPA&M?
Yes, we would.
Okay. And is the department amenable to revising the language of the compliance database system to refer instead to a compliance data system as suggested by CDG's witness?
Yes.
And can you just clarify about the compliance data system and the Excel spreadsheet issue? Can you say something about that, please?
Sure. Yeah. So the compliance data system can be many different types of systems. We did not intend it to be limiting to exclude certain products that we think meets the intent of the rule. And so, for instance, as I believe I spoke to earlier in the day, the department is working on a template database system to provide to the smallest operators in the state to comply with this requirement. That is an Excel spreadsheet that can serve as the database system and have generated reports run from that same database system to, or the data system to develop a compliance data report.
Thank you. And that is what you were referring to when you said that we had our contractors working on a template for that.
That's exactly right.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to the annual compliance certification that we heard a lot of testimony from CDG's witnesses. Is it the intent of the annual compliance certification to require companies to conduct a full environmental audit of each facility every year as asserted by Ms. Marquez and Ms. Cooper?
No, that is not the intent of this requirement. An environmental audit is a much broader, more comprehensive type of audit. with a much larger scope than what's intended by this requirement. The annual certification requirement is a compilation of the compliance data that an operator is generating as required by the part, and this report simply combines that information that's collected over the year and compiles it into a single report.
And would the proposed compliance certification interfere with a formal environmental audit?
No, there is no interaction between this compliance certification with a full environmental audit, which is, again, much more comprehensive, much more involved, looking at an overall overview of the organization's activities and services in relation to compliance with relevant statutes and other requirements. That it will no way interfere with a formal environmental audit.
And why is it important to have this compliance evaluation that our rule contemplates certified by the owner or operator?
So this is similar to having a responsible official sign off on certain pieces of information. This will require the owner and operator to affirmatively certify to the findings of the assessment.
And is the department amenable to clarifying the language regarding the annual compliance certifications?
Yes, to the extent that it clarifies all of the things that I just said, we're amenable to changing that language to make that more clear.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. And does the department suggest that the parties who have raised issues with that provision get together to come up with some proposed language that the department could consider?
Yes, it would be preferable for them to work collaboratively together, come up with a proposal that they all can agree with, and we can provide that to the department for our consideration.
Would the department agree to limiting compliance certification to only those cases where there are significant compliance issues as proposed by Mr. Brown, IPA&M's witness? And can you respond to Mr. Brown's concern regarding the burdens of the annual compliance certification requirements on smaller operators?
Correct. So, and this will, with the data system Excel spreadsheet that we are developing specifically for small operators to comply with the monitoring and tracking requirements and reporting requirements of this rule, and record keeping requirements of this rule. Well, first, let me state that it is not appropriate for the certification to only address major instances of compliance issues. It needs to be, and the intent was to have a compilation of compliance with all terms and conditions of Part 50. These owners and operators are already conducting that monitoring and record keeping. This is a compilation of all of those existing records. And so it should not be a huge lift to compile that information into a single report. And we are putting tools in place to ensure that that is an easy thing to do for those small operators. And I will also add that small business facilities are not required to prepare this report. So there is no requirement for them to conduct this kind of report.
Okay, thank you. So I'm moving to Kinder Morgan's witnesses' concern regarding the monthly inspections that are specified in paragraph 112B2.
Correct.
Have you taken another look at that provision?
Yes.
So, and would you agree that each section of the rule contains specific monitoring requirements for that particular equipment or process?
Yes.
And was that general monitoring set forth in section 112 intended to be something unique from the other monitoring required in the rule?
No, it was not.
And so is the department willing to remove that monthly requirement from the general provisions and rely on the monitoring specified in each section of the rule?
Yes. And it clarifies what their monitoring requirements are. There's sufficient and effective monitoring in each section. And so we agree that that requirement can be struck.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for Ms. Keene. So if it's okay, maybe should I move to Mr. Baka and then the board can ask questions of both of them as they wish?
I think that's
Is that
a great
okay?
idea.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Baka. So regarding Mr. Nichols' testimony, and his proposed language in subsection A of 112 that would require the department to deny permits to all sources that emit any amount of ozone precursors. Do the Air Quality Control Act or the board's permitting regulations authorize the department to do this?
No, and I believe that his proposal is outside the scope of the rule. So the Air Quality Control Act and the board's permitting regulations allow the department to deny permits or construction permits, let me clarify, for limited reasons. And the most common reason is to deny a permit when emissions from that source would cause or contribute to air contaminant levels in excess or an exceedance of any max. So we feel that his proposal would be contrary to the Air Quality Control Act and the Clean Air Act. The board's construction permitting rules are fully adopted and approved by EPA into New Mexico SIP. And those rules also outline when a permit can be denied. The rules dictate the requirements for all air quality analysis for major sources, including modeling for violations of the NAAQS and other screening tools. So as we've heard earlier from previous witness, this has been hashed out before the board before in previous appeals. So we have demonstrated before the board that, or they have found that sources, minor sources are below the significant impact level established by EPA and would not be considered to cause or contribute to ozone concentrations in violation of the standard. So, and I believe that EPA has demonstrated through modeling that minor sources will always be through this cell. So that modeling is complete and would never be considered to cause or contribute to a violation of the standard. So, you know, to put it another way, all minor sources by definition are below the significant impact level for ozone.
Okay. And this proposed rule, though, does regulate those sources, right?
It does.
Yes. Okay. Does the Clean Air Act mandate that development must stop in any areas of a state that are exceeding the ozone NAAQS?
No, it does not. So the Clean Air Act is not intended to inhibit or prohibit any activities or economic activity or growth. So when it was constructed, Congress came up with the Non-Attainment New Source Review permitting program, which contains provisions for permitting offsets. So any new emission source must offset their emissions by a ratio of 1.1 to 1 or greater, depending on the classification of the non-attainment area. So just through that provision, permitting doesn't stop just because an area is in non-attainment.
And those types of requirements would have to be put in place if in an area of state that was designated as non-attainment by EPA, correct?
That is correct. So that would have to be for a designated non-attainment area, such as the Sunland Park area. That is where the non-attainment permitting would come into play.
All right, let's move to the deviations issue. So Mr. Nichols has proposed requiring reporting to the department for deviations from the rule. And can you explain why the department opposes these additional provisions?
Sure. I think there's been quite some confusion created with this term deviation. Deviation is a Title V concept and term that is used within the regulatory scheme of permitting. So I don't think it would be appropriate to apply it in the context of this rule. So it might be familiar to some of our Title V permit holders. It would introduce, I think, significant confusion for our regulated community. Deviation is defined in the regs, and it holds a specific technical meaning within the program. So deviations are not necessarily violations under the Title V program. And in order to determine if a deviation is a violation, it must be reviewed by the department. So under our Title V program, deviations are reported to the department under people's permits. So that's a separate program. So in Mr. Nichols' proposal, he did not provide any sort of definition for this term. So we had no way of considering what he's really talking about when he says deviation. You know, what does a deviation constitute? I think Mr. Nichols' proposal is not fully vetted or developed to evaluate whether this is really needed, what the benefit would be, whether his proposal is adequate, and any of the practical implications of implementing this reporting system.
If every single source subject to this rule were required to report deviations as a Title V source, what implications would that have for the department's resources?
I think that would just overwhelm us. I think in Mr. Nichols' testimony, in his statement, he says that his proposal might pose or could pose logistical and data management challenges. I will tell you right now that they would pose logistical and data management challenges. So I think we would be overwhelmed with the number of reports provided to the department, and there would be no way for us to comprehensively review those and determine what's going on with them. So I fear that it would, the intent of the rule is really to ensure compliance with the proposed emission standards and minimize emissions reductions. So I think that it does that by setting deadlines to complete repairs for faulty equipment whenever leaks are detected. And it also requires that, regulated entities keep records which they can provide to the department upon request. There is a whole section dedicated to credible evidence and talking about how the department works with the public on this. We have a tip line that people can go to on our website to enter any complaints that we look into. So I just think, in our opinion, the department feels that his proposal is introducing additional burdens that are without any public health benefits that we can see. I think the staff resources for both industry and the department are better spent addressing issues with compliance that have to do with emissions to the atmosphere. So I think, just the reporting, the act of reporting and collecting of data doesn't provide pertinent air quality data related to the public. So in his proposed testimony, any kind of reporting would be required. That wouldn't necessarily provide any public health information. We provide that information through our monitoring network and emissions data that we collect, and we provide that all to the public. So we have excess emissions that we post on our website. We have Title V actuals that we collect. And in 2020, we actually just completed our minor source emissions inventory. So we do continue, we'll plan on continuing emissions inventory information from sources. And we believe that this information is readily available to the public. And if it's in, the department's possession, anyone can do an Inspection of Public Records Act request and receive that information from the department.
Okay. And Mr. Nichols also proposed reporting requirements for excess emissions. Can you discuss the department's response to this proposal?
Sure. Sources subject to the board's excess emissions are subject to .2.7 NMAC already. And we don't feel that Mr. Nichols' proposal provides any enhanced compliance incentives for industry or any way for the department to more effectively implement and enforce this rule. I'd like to also point that there's section 11 of the rule that is titled Compliance with Other Regulations. And that section states that compliance with the proposed rule does not relieve any source from compliance with any other state, federal, or local law.
And so they are subject to the board's excess emissions regulations at 20.2.7 NMAC, correct?
That is correct. And I believe we've heard testimony to that effect earlier.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Baka. I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Katz. I'm going to pause for a moment in the event any of the other parties would like to come on screen to ask questions of the department panel. I see Mr. Nichols. Mr. Nichols.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Baka. Good evening, Mr. Baka. I want to start with your testimony on Guardian's reporting requirement. Reporting requirement proposal. So if an owner or operator didn't have any deviations from the proposed rules, would that owner or operator have to report anything to the department according to our proposal?
Yes, according to your proposal. Okay, can you restate that? According to your proposal, would the department be required to do what now?
Let me rephrase. So hypothetically, there's an owner or operator of an oil or gas facility. If that facility didn't have any deviations from the department's proposed rules, under our Guardian's proposal, that owner or operator wouldn't have to report anything to the department. Is that right?
I believe that would be correct. If there no deviation occurs, then no reporting would be.
Okay. I also want to ask you another hypothetical. You mentioned that you testified that Guardian's proposal wouldn't provide any pertinent information, and I just want to ask you a hypothetical. If there were an industrial facility in proximity to your family's home that involved the use of an air pollutant like ozone precursors, would you want to know if that facility was having compliance issues with the department's proposed rules that otherwise aren't already reported?
Sure, and the department has other provisions to ensure that emissions from sources are collected and that we do receive that information. So as I just testified, we have our excess emissions reporting, we have Title V reporting, and we just did a minor source emission inventory. So we do collect emissions data that's pertinent. What my testimony said was that it's not pertinent to public health. And so what we're calling a deviation, I'm not still clear on what that is. A deviation is not necessarily a violation. The department has to review that deviation under the Title V program is what I'm talking about now to determine what a violation is. So I think, by just reporting deviation of a work practice standard does not provide public health information to the public.
Right, but my question was, would you want to know, so if there was a compliance issue that's not already reported under, like we've talked about, the excess emission reporting requirements, but if there's a compliance issue with the rules that have been proposed by the department, would you want to know about that?
I believe I stated yes. That was my first answer. I said yes, and the department has emissions collection programs.
Okay, thank you.
So I do think that information is valuable to the public. I don't, as we have an undefined term right now that we're talking about, and I having a hard time kind of visualizing what you have proposed. So we're talking all hypotheticals, and we're not really talking about well-defined concepts here.
Okay, thank you. I just want to turn to your testimony on our proposal about permitting. You stated that the Air Quality Control Act provides essentially when the department can deny permits. And I took you to mean, or to be referring to subsection 74-2-7C of the Air Quality Control Act. Is that the right section that you had in mind?
Sounds correct.
Okay.
Sounds correct.
I'm gonna just share my screen, just an image of that, that particular section. So can you see 74-2-7?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm gonna just scroll to subsection C of that statute. And excuse me, would you just read subsection C starting at C and then read through 1A, please?
Sure. Except as provided in subsection O of this section, the department or local agency may deny any application for 1. A construction permit if it appears that the construction or modification A. will not meet applicable standards, rules, or requirements of the Air Quality Control Act or the Federal Act.
Okay. And if the department's proposed rules are adopted by the board, would you agree that these rules would become rules of the Air Quality Control Act?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nikiel. If we'd stop sharing your screen, please. Thank you. And let me see if there are any other parties who have questions of the ED panel. No. At this time, then, we'll turn to the board for their questions. While we're doing that, if you're an attendee on this platform and have a question, please reach out through the chat. Madam Chair.
Hi, Madam Hearing Officer. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Trujillo Davis.
Yes, thank you. I just have one question, just for clarification after all the back and forth, which is helpful and good. Mr. Baka, is there are we really getting to like discussing the difference between a deviation and an excess remission report? Are they being used interchangeably? Is that what you were trying to clarify there?
Yes, Board Member Trujillo Davis. I'm trying to clarify that. I really don't know what a deviation is as proposed by Wild Earth Guardians. Deviation is a technical term pulled from Title V, but as applied in this context, it really doesn't mean much to anyone. So what I'm saying is without a definition in this role, we really don't know what a deviation is.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear in my head that these two terms were being used interchangeably, and you did a good job of explaining the difference, and I appreciate that. Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Member Cates?
No questions here. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Member Bitzer?
No questions here. Thank you.
All right. Member Garcia?
Questions, thank you, but I appreciate you all clarifying that this would be exempt for small businesses, this provision. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Hunker?
No questions, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Katz, will there be any redirect?
No, Madam Hearing Officer, nothing more from me.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Baka and Ms. Keene, once again. Have we then, by virtue of hearing some of the SIR rebuttal earlier, completed topic 23?
I believe that we have.
I'm going to pause a moment.
Amazingly.
Okay, I'm going to pause a moment in case there is some disagreement on that point. Going once, topic 23. Okay, thank you very much. Can we move to topic 24 and perhaps at least get the departments? Oh, there's Mr. Boutier.
Madam Hearing Officer, I was coming on not to talk about 23, but to make a suggestion relating to topic 24.
Alrighty, I'm ready.
I don't know if Madam Hearing Officer and the board intend to continue this evening, but if it does, my suggestion would be that we not at this late hour jump into an important topic such as is presented in 113B, the emissions standards relating to engines. But there are some issues in 113C that perhaps we could knock out if people are still this late in the hour and this late in the week wanting to go further. But in any event, I would propose, notwithstanding the earlier discussion we had among council, that we start with the engine emission standards on Monday morning after the public comment session, leave Tuesday, as we discussed, for pneumatics, and push the LDAR related issues to Wednesday or whenever they might be fit in on Monday and Tuesday after the two topics I've mentioned.
Madam Hearing Officer?
Cats.
Madam Hearing Officer, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Boutier. I agree. I actually think we should not even start at all with engines tonight. I think it's too confusing to try to parse things out. And that should be presented as a whole to the board as much as possible. And I also agree with that rearranging of the schedule to move engines and turbines to Monday, pneumatics to Tuesday, and LDAR to Wednesday. And so I might suggest, and I don't know if I ask others to weigh in, if we might be able to pick a smaller provision of the rule that has less issues, maybe, and I'll ask other people to suggest one. I mean, maybe glycol dehydrators. I don't know if people are ready to present on those. So I guess I guess I'll ask for some input if there might be another topic that we could take on fairly easily.
Ms. Fox?
We have an agreement on credible evidence.
You have an agreement
That's
on
true,
what?
there is. Agreement on what?
Credible evidence.
On credible evidence, yeah.
Bang that one out.
I mean, we could bang that out, yeah. But that one, yeah, and that would just take a few minutes, I would think.
Okay.
So we could do that.
I think that's great. Let's do
Okay. Let's see.
I wonder if I may speak. I wonder if we may hear from the board on this. I personally am of the mind that it's 6:05 and 6:09, and it's been a long day for everybody, and so I my 2 cents is let's start anew on Monday.
Okay. Any other board member input? Oh, I see Member Bitzer cheering your statement, Vice Chair.
I have a kind of a general question, and I very much support Member Kate's suggestion here, because I actually kind of want to put my kids to bed tonight. But if we don't, I am concerned about the timeline, the 2-week time frame, and we only have 5 days left in this. We have to get through the whole rule. So if we're getting towards the end of it, what is there a procedure? I know in previous hearings, when we've allotted 4 hours, we've gone 9, and so on. So can somebody tell me what generally happens here in a big hearing like this?
Well, there are a couple of strategies. One is, again, to start earlier or go later. I felt like I heard earlier from the board that they did not want to start earlier, and several of the lawyers would not be able to comfortably start earlier, which leaves us going later. Another strategy is for everyone to pull out their calendars and find some dates later into October to finish the hearing. And then the strategy we hoped would be effective in moving us along more expeditiously in this time, the 2-week period, is that the lawyers agreed to identify those places where they could stipulate to something and not put on a witness on that particular point. And as I think it was Mr. Jano pointed out, one of the issues with that is, even as the department has done a heroic job of negotiating with industry and negotiating with environmental advocates, even when they agree with the Environment Department, someone else might not. And so they effectively have to put on the evidence regardless in order to try to persuade you to, for example, go with the department's proposal rather than an alternative one. So it's not just about their posture vis-a-vis the department. It's also their posture vis-a-vis other parties, which is, of course, what makes some of this a challenge. So I certainly got a good feeling from our meeting this morning at 8 o'clock. And I'm hopeful that the lawyers seem to be sincerely committing to doing what they could to streamline things. Ms. Katz, do you have something to add?
No, I mean, I hear the board certainly, and I hear the concerns. I guess I would very much advocate to see if we can please try to get it finished. It's going to be difficult for us to get to be coming back, I think. And I know I myself was hoping to take a lot of time off in October because it's been a very grueling several months for the department. So if anything that we can do to try to get it done, I certainly would prefer that, but I do understand that everybody does have lives, but we can try to get it done.
I understand that some of the topics that are coming up, knowing these specific topics personally, like compressors, and I'm sorry for the crying in the background. But the compressors and the pneumatics, I know they're going to be big topics. So I think we should just try to get one more thing knocked out this evening, and that's just my vote on it.
Okay, Professor Pisiniak?
This might be premature, but I just wanted to circle back to Mr. Boutsier's suggestion, and I didn't think I heard whether folks thought that Eldar on Wednesday might be a good plan, and it would be helpful to me to know if Ms. Katz agreed with that.
I did agree with that. Although, I mean, yes, I just was thinking, we basically need to allocate a specific day for engines and for pneumatics and Eldar. So that's how we thought just move Eldar over to Wednesday. So yes, we do agree with that.
Okay. So is there, I've heard now from a couple of board members who don't want to tackle another topic tonight, and at least one who would like to tackle something short. Any other input?
Yes, Madam Hearing Officer, if I may. I'm certainly not voting on going late, but I do have a suggestion to revisit a topic we talked about yesterday, I believe, was if we could, I think we could get a lot farther if we eliminate the testimony of people saying where they agree. I understand it's wonderful, it's great to know, but I understand that there's a lot of areas where there's been back and forth with the parties, and there's a lot of areas where there's been agreement worked out. That's great. I'm happy to hear it. But I don't think we need to take time talking about it during the hearing. I think what the board needs to make a decision about is where they don't agree. That's what we're going to have to make a decision on. So if that's just, another idea about making this a little more efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Garcia. And that was why I was saying earlier, I know council heard that concern on the part of the board, that they were hearing from folks who said, well, now we've reached agreement with the department, but it doesn't mean they reached agreement with other parties who have alternative proposals. That's really why you're going to continue to hear a little bit of that. Madam Chair, did you have something to add?
Well, Madam Hearing Officer, can I
Oh.
just say one thing to that issue is that there have been communications among the parties that we're going to try to endeavor to identify things this weekend and figure out which, ask everybody if there's other parties who weren't involved in that agreement that are going to have an issue with it. So I think we'll be able to work some of that out this weekend to hopefully to the benefit of what Member Garcia is suggesting.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. Madam Chair, you're unmuted.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I'm still dealing with bandwidth over here. I just wanted to share with everybody, I recognize that there's some logistical discussion that has to happen on the record, and that there's still contention about, amongst various stakeholders, for even though it seems maybe a majority of stakeholders agree, there's still probably needs to be that discussion to address those that still don't agree, or there's still some concern. So I understand that as well, and that is a challenge. And if what Ms. Katz had just mentioned, if that can help expedite us next week, that's great. I just wanted to throw out there, I know we had talked about trying to go earlier, if it helps. I know I was one that said I already had commitments next week. I think I can move those around if we do want to start earlier, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe half an hour later. Half an hour on both sides would give us another hour. I'm just throwing that out. And so I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
All right, thank you very much. Well, it seems, Member Honker.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with the frustration of Member Garcia that we seem to be spending time on things that have been revised, and there's some degree of agreement. And I also wanted to agree with members Cates and Bitzer in favor of not going later tonight. I would have more flexibility early and late next week, I think.
Right. So what if we were to end now, pick up Monday morning, see what benefits the council's work over the weekend are able to get us in terms of streamlining. And if I might, because we wouldn't be starting early Monday, if the board members could possibly agree to go a little later Monday. And I'm only talking 6:30 or 7. I truly am not talking terribly late. Ms. Katz?
That's I do want to just say that I think I think we are really looking at that we won't be able to get it done. I hope that we will. I hope we'll come to that. So I guess we can just talk about it where we are on Monday, and then see if we think we'll be able to get it done in the week. So that sounds good.
Okay. Thank you very much. Unless there's something else, we will adjourn for the weekend. Thank you all very much.
Oh, I have one question.
Ms. Fox?
Just clarification on the order next week. We're going to do engines on Monday and then pneumatics on Tuesday and Elder on Wednesday. Is that correct? Great.
Correct.
Thank you all very much.
Ms. Orth, I had just a quick question for you.
Yes.
I'm curious, at what point?
I'm sorry, are we off the record now?
Do you need this on the record, Vice Chair?
I don't think it matters. I was just curious at what point.
We're going to continue talking, but we're off the record. Thank you, Terrell.
Oh, that's okay. I was just curious, at what point did you think we might need to reconsider like our next plan, like if we need more time or should.
I think Ms. Katz is suggesting that we have that discussion Monday at the end of the day.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.